I still remember that evening like it happened just yesterday. The living room smelled faintly of old books and coffee, the kind of smell that clings to a house after decades of quiet living. My recliner creaked when I leaned back, and the ticking of the wall clock filled the silence. I had grown used to silence over the years. It was my most loyal companion. But that day, for a brief moment, I believed I wasn't alone anymore. My son, David, stood in front of me with that soft smile he had inherited from his mother. His hands were shoved into the pockets of his jeans, like he wasn't sure what to do with them. He cleared his throat, glanced around the room as if trying to gather his words, and then finally looked me in the eye. "Dad," he said, his voice steady but warm, "I want you to know something. No matter what happens, I'll always take care of you. You won't ever have to worry about being alone." At first, I thought I had misheard him. It had been so long since David had spoken to me with that kind of tenderness. My chest tightened, and for a second, I couldn't find the right words to respond. All I managed was a nod, though my eyes betrayed me, filling with the kind of tears you try to blink away before anyone notices. "You mean that?" I finally whispered, my voice rough from age and disbelief. David stepped closer and placed a hand on my shoulder. "I mean it, Dad. You've done enough for me all my life. Now it's my turn. You don't need to worry about anything anymore." Those words hit me harder than any medicine or prayer ever could. For years, I had feared being a burden, feared becoming that old man people whisper about, too frail, too needy, too much trouble to keep around. But in that moment, all of those fears seemed to melt away. I looked at him, searching for any hint of hesitation, but there was none. His expression was so genuine that for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to breathe easy. "Thank you, son," I said softly. My voice cracked, and I hated how fragile it made me sound. But David didn't seem to mind. He squeezed my shoulder gently before letting go. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The creaking of the house didn't haunt me. The ache in my joints felt lighter, and for once, I didn't wake up every hour, staring at the ceiling, wondering if tomorrow would be worse than today. I let myself believe his promise. The following days felt different. Even the smallest gestures carried more weight. When David stopped by with groceries, I noticed how he set them neatly on the counter, making sure I had everything I needed. When he fixed a loose railing on the porch, I caught myself smiling as if I were watching him as a boy again, hammering toy nails into scraps of wood. One afternoon, while I was sipping tea on the porch, David joined me. The sun was low, spilling golden light across the yard, and for a moment, we sat in comfortable silence. I broke it with a question that had been pressing on my heart. "David," I said quietly, "what made you say that to me the other day? About taking care of me?" He didn't look at me right away. He rubbed his palms together, then leaned back against the porch railing. "I don't know, Dad. Maybe I've just been thinking. About life, about how short it is. I don't want to take you for granted." His answer seemed sincere enough, and I let it settle in my heart like a bomb. I didn't push further. I didn't want to ruin the fragile peace that had settled between us. For weeks, I held on to that promise like it was a lifeline. Every call, every visit, every small gesture from David became proof that I wasn't forgotten, that I wasn't drifting quietly into the background of his busy life. I began to feel hope again. Hope that my old age wouldn't be marked by loneliness, but by the comfort of family. Sometimes, late at night, I would picture myself years from now, sitting at the same dining table with David and his wife, maybe even their children if life was kind. Laughter filling the air, warm meals shared, stories told and retold. For the first time, those dreams didn't feel foolish. They felt possible. One evening, I wrote in my old leather journal, a habit I'd picked up decades ago when my wife was still alive. I scribbled the words, "David promised." He said he'd take care of me. I underlined it twice. I wanted to remember that moment forever. I wanted it etched in ink, so I'd never doubt that it had happened. There was a calmness in me I hadn't felt in years. I told myself that no matter how much my body grew weaker, no matter how gray my hair became, I would not be abandoned. My son had spoken, and I believed him. Looking back now, I realize how dangerous hope can be. It blinds you, makes you overlook the small details, the subtle hesitations, the quick glances that don't quite match the words. But at that time, I didn't see any of it. I only saw my son smile. I only heard his promise. And for a little while, I let myself believe that it was love. The promise David made to me still echoed in my chest, like a steady heartbeat. I had clung to it like a lifeline, never once imagining that words so comforting could carry shadows behind them. For weeks, everything seemed normal, better than normal even. He visited often, checked on me, made sure the cupboards weren't empty, and the house didn't fall into disrepair. To any outsider, we might have looked like a father and son finally finding peace after years of quiet distance. But slowly, ever so quietly, things began to shift. It started with the way his wife, Claire, looked at me. At first, it was nothing. An odd glance here, a pursed lip there, the kind of expression people wear when they're holding back words. But then, it grew harder to ignore. When David wasn't around, her politeness thinned like ice under the sun. Her voice, once warm, turned clipped, almost impatient. One Saturday morning, she came by with David, carrying a grocery bag. While David unloaded the items in the kitchen, Claire lingered in the hallway with me. She offered a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "How are you feeling, Mr. Miller?" she asked. "I'm managing," I said, trying to keep my tone light. Her smile tightened. "That's good. It's just things have been a little busy for us. David has a lot on his plate, and I don't want him overwhelmed." Something in her voice struck me. It wasn't just concern, it was warning. I nodded politely, though confusion tugged at me. When David returned, she quickly changed the subject, masking whatever she truly wanted to say. That night, while I was resting in my recliner, I replayed the conversation in my head. Her words clung to me, unsettling. Why would she say David had a lot on his plate? Taking care of his father wasn't supposed to be a burden. It was a promise he had made willingly. The small cracks widened days later. I woke in the middle of the night to fetch a glass of water. As I passed by the back porch, I noticed the faint glow of headlights cutting across the curtains. Curious, I peeked outside. David's car was parked there. My heart lifted for a moment. Maybe he had come to check on me. But when I opened the door slightly, I heard voices. David's voice, low and hushed, carried through the night air. "Claire," I told him I'd handle it. "Just don't bring it up right now." Her reply was sharper. "Handle it? David, he's already clinging to the idea that he's your responsibility. We can't keep stretching ourselves like this. We have our own future to think about." I froze. The glass in my hand trembled, threatening to slip. Their words weren't meant for me, but they sliced through my chest all the same. Responsibility. Stretching. Future. Was that what I had become? A weight pulling them down, a stone tied around their necks? I backed away from the door before they could see me. My breathing was shallow, and the kitchen light overhead flickered faintly, as though mocking my unease. I returned to my recliner, but there was no comfort in it anymore. My son's promise replayed in my mind, now tainted with doubt. "No matter what happens, I'll always take care of you." Did he mean it? Or was it something he said to ease his guilt? A sentence rehearsed to quiet my fears, while he whispered the truth to Claire behind closed doors? The days that followed became a study in contradictions. David's actions remained caring on the surface. He still showed up with groceries, still asked how I was doing. But I noticed the way Claire hovered, the way her eyes darted to him as if to remind him of something unspoken. Their laughter, once light, now felt strained in my home. I began to feel like an intruder in my own life. One evening, I decided to test it. Over dinner, as we shared a simple meal of roasted chicken and potatoes, I looked directly at David. "Son," I said slowly, "do you really mean what you said the other week? About always being there for me?" He hesitated, just for a second. It was quick. So quick that most people might have missed it, but I saw it. His fork hovered midair before he forced a smile. "Of course, Dad. You don't even have to ask." Claire's fork clattered against her plate at that moment. She quickly covered it with a laugh, but the sound was too sharp, too forced. I pretended not to notice, though the unease in my stomach grew heavier. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows shifting with every passing car outside. My chest ached, not from age, but from something deeper. A betrayal I couldn't quite name yet. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But the whispers I had overheard gnawed at me. I began noticing other things too. The way bills seemed to disappear from the mail pile before I could read them. The hushed phone calls David took outside. The way Claire's smile hardened whenever I spoke about the future. None of it felt like coincidence. And then came the moment that confirmed my fears. I had walked into the kitchen one afternoon, moving slower than usual, and stopped when I heard their voices again. They were talking softly, but this time I was close enough to catch every word. "He still thinks you'll be the one to look after him," Claire said, her voice tight. David sighed heavily. "I know. I just don't know how to tell him the truth yet." The words hung in the air like a noose tightening around my throat. The truth. What truth? I stood there, gripping the doorframe, my body trembling. My son's promise, the very words that had given me peace, were unraveling before my ears. Every second felt heavier than the last, and yet I couldn't move. I just stood there, listening, waiting, dreading the next sentence. And that was when I realized what I had once believed to be love might have only been obligation. If you want to know what happens next in the story, please subscribe to the channel. I didn't sleep that night. The words, "I just don't know how to tell him the truth yet," kept circling in my mind like a storm that wouldn't pass. Truth. What truth? My son had promised me care, security, and peace in my final years. If that wasn't the truth, then what had I been living in? By sunrise, I made myself a cup of black coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam curling up into nothing. My hands shook slightly as I tried to steady the mug. I thought about confronting him right then, demanding answers. But something inside me whispered to wait, to watch, to uncover the truth myself. So, I started paying closer attention. It began small. I checked the mail before David arrived, slipping letters into a drawer before he could help sort them. I noticed unfamiliar envelopes addressed in my name, financial statements, investment updates I didn't remember signing. My name was there, but the details were foggy, almost as if someone else had been making decisions on my behalf. I called the bank one afternoon when David and Claire weren't around. The woman on the other end politely confirmed my identity and hesitated before saying, "Sir, it seems your son has been authorized on your account for quite some time." My heart nearly stopped. Authorized? I hadn't given him permission, not formally anyway. Maybe I had trusted him with paperwork here and there. Maybe I had signed a document without reading every word. But to grant him access to my entire retirement savings? No, that wasn't something I would ever do. I hung up quickly, fear wrapping itself around me like a vice. If David had access, what had he already done? From that moment, I knew I couldn't just sit back and hope for the best. I had to dig deeper. The following week, I pretended to nap in my recliner when David stopped by. Through my half-shut eyes, I watched him quietly slip into the study, carrying a folder tucked under his arm. He closed the door softly, but not softly enough. Once he left, I crept inside. The faint smell of his cologne lingered in the air. On the desk sat a scrap of paper he must have left behind, a number scribbled down with the name Harper beside it. I didn't recognize it, but my gut told me it mattered. That night, curiosity gnawed at me. I dialed the number, my hands trembling. A man answered. "Harper Realty, this is Tom." Realty. My blood ran cold. Sorry, wrong number," I muttered, hanging up quickly. Realty. My son had been in contact with a realtor. Why? Was he planning to sell something? My home? My land? Or worse, was he already arranging it behind my back? The next morning, I shuffled through the kitchen drawers until I found a faded key ring that held a spare key to David's house. He'd given it to me years ago, back when trust was whole and unbroken. I pocketed it, telling myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was simply finding answers. 2 days later, when I knew David and Claire would be out for the evening, I drove slowly to their house. My old sedan groaned against the quiet suburban street as I parked a block away. I felt like a thief, sneaking toward my own son's home. Inside, everything was immaculate. Claire's touch was everywhere, the polished counters, the scented candles. But I wasn't there to admire. I searched the study, then the bedroom, finally landing in the garage. That's where I found it. A box labeled with my name. Inside were files, statements, and documents I hadn't seen before. I flipped through them, my breath quickening with each page. Retirement accounts. Withdrawals. Transactions I never approved. My savings, the very nest egg I had built for decades of labor, was slowly being siphoned away. I felt sick. Betrayal burned in my chest like fire. He wasn't just planning. He had already started. Then, tucked in the bottom of the box, I found something worse, a draft contract. It was for the sale of my house. My house. The place where I had raised David, where his mother's laughter still seemed to echo in the hallways. I sank onto the cold cement floor, my legs unable to hold me up. Tears blurred the ink on the paper as I stared at the truth I had been too afraid to face. My son, the boy I had once carried on my shoulders, was preparing to strip me of everything. My home, my savings, my dignity. A noise outside jolted me back. A car door slammed. Panic shot through me like electricity. I shoved the papers back into the box, hands shaking, and hurried out the back door. By the time David's headlights swept across the driveway, I was already gone, heart pounding against my ribs as I drove away into the night. Back home, I sat in the dark, staring at the walls that suddenly felt unfamiliar. Every photo of David on the shelves seemed to mock me, a reminder of the boy I thought I knew. The boy who had promised care, but had been planning betrayal all along. For days, I carried the weight of what I had discovered, torn between confronting him and waiting for the right moment. My mind replayed every whispered word, every strange glance from Claire, every lie disguised as reassurance. I wasn't just a burden in their eyes, I was an obstacle, and they were preparing to move me out of the way. The truth was no longer hidden. I had found the trail, and it led straight to the heart of my son's deception. But how I would confront him, and what it would cost both of us, remained a question that clawed at my soul. If you want to know what happens next in the story, please subscribe to the channel. The papers from David's garage wouldn't leave my mind. They haunted me with every step I took inside my own house. I'd sit at the kitchen table, staring at the contract for the sale of my home burned into my memory, hearing his voice echoing in my head. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll take care of everything." Everything. That word used to comfort me. Now it was a curse. For days, I walked through the halls of my house, brushing my fingers against the faded wallpaper, the picture frames, the door frames marked with pencil lines from when David was growing. Each touch was a reminder of what was at stake. My home wasn't just walls and bricks, it was a lifetime. His mother's perfume still lingered faintly in the closet. Her laughter felt alive in the living room, and he wanted to erase all of it for a profit. I decided it was time. It was a Thursday evening when I called David and asked him to stop by. My voice was steady, though my heart raced in my chest. He agreed, as casual as ever, not knowing the storm that waited for him. The sun dipped behind the trees as I prepared the living room. I didn't turn on all the lights, just the lamp in the corner, casting a warm but narrow glow. The rest of the room stayed shadowed, quiet, heavy. I wanted him to feel the weight of what was about to happen. When he arrived, his knock was light, almost careless. I opened the door and looked at him, really looked at him, as if I were meeting him for the first time. My son, my betrayer. "Hey, Dad," he said with a smile, stepping inside like nothing was wrong. I gestured to the couch. "Sit." He hesitated, brows furrowing slightly, but obeyed. I sat across from him, the coffee table between us. For a moment, I just watched him. His hands rested on his knees, tapping lightly, a habit he had when he was nervous. That told me everything. He already knew something was off. "I need to ask you something," I began, my voice low, steady. "Of course," he said quickly, too quickly. I leaned forward. "Why have you been talking to Harper Realty about selling my house?" The air cracked between us. His face froze, the practiced calm slipping like a mask pulled too fast. He blinked, stammered. I don't know what you're talking about." My hand slammed the table, louder than I intended. "Don't lie to me, David. I saw the papers. The draft contract. My retirement account withdrawals. Everything." His shoulders stiffened. His lips pressed together until they turned white. For a long moment, he didn't speak, and the silence pressed down on us like a stone. Finally, he sighed, leaning back, eyes avoiding mine. "Dad, you don't understand." "Then explain." I shot back. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're stealing from me, selling the only thing I have left without my permission." He rubbed his face, exhaling sharply. "It's not like that. You're getting older, and you don't need all this space. Claire and I, we thought." "We?" My voice broke, sharp and bitter. "You thought you could take my house, drain my savings, and what? Tuck me away somewhere out of sight." "Dad." "No, don't dad me." I snapped, standing now, my hands shaking. "I trusted you with everything. I trusted you to look after me, to keep your promise. And this is how you repay me? By planning my life behind my back." His eyes glistened for a second, but then he hardened, his jaw tightening. "I was trying to do what's best for everyone. You don't see it now, but—" I cut him off with a bitter laugh. "Best for everyone? Or best for you, David? Tell me, where does your father fit into your plan?" The silence that followed was worse than any answer he could have given. His lack of words was the truth I had feared. I sank back into my chair, the anger giving way to something deeper, grief. My chest ached as though I'd lost him already. "Your mother would have been ashamed," I whispered. That hit him. He flinched, his face twisting as if I had struck him. For a brief second, the boy I raised flickered behind his eyes, but it was gone too quickly, replaced by the cold man who sat before me. We sat there in the dim light, the quiet heavier than any shouting match could have been. Finally, I spoke, my voice steadier now. "You've made your choice, David, and I'll make mine." His head snapped up, alarm sparking in his eyes. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to, not yet. The decision was forming inside me, solid and sharp like steel. He wanted to strip me of my home, my savings, my dignity. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I stood, moving toward the window, staring out into the night. My reflection looked back at me, tired, older, but not broken. I wouldn't let him break me. Behind me, David shifted uneasily. "Dad, please. Let's just talk about this." I turned, my voice calm, almost cold. "I think we've talked enough." The quiet swallowed us again, but this time, it was final. If you want to know what happens next in the story, please subscribe to the channel. The night after David left my house, I couldn't sleep. His footsteps still echoed in the hallways, his excuses replaying in my ears, like a broken record. I sat alone in the quiet, the lamp's glow casting long shadows against the walls that had once felt safe, alive. Now, they felt like battlegrounds. For hours, I thought about what he had said, how he claimed to know what was best for everyone. That phrase gnawed at me, as if my existence was just a piece on his chessboard. He wanted to move me aside, not out of love, but out of convenience. By morning, my decision was made. I pulled out an old wooden box from the back of my closet, the one that had stayed untouched for years. Inside were my wife's letters, old photographs, and most importantly, the deeds and legal papers of the house. My hands trembled as I spread them across the table. Each paper was proof of the life I had built with sweat, sacrifice, and love. This wasn't just property. It was my story. I called my lawyer that afternoon. He was an old friend of mine, someone I could trust. I told him everything, about the withdrawals, the hidden documents, David's betrayal. He listened quietly before saying, "You still have the right to protect yourself. Don't give that up." With his help, I locked down every account, secured the house deed in my name only, and set up a trust that David couldn't touch. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of control returning. When David found out, he showed up at my door again, his tone harsher this time, no longer wrapped in false concern. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded, standing in the doorway like a stranger. I looked him straight in the eye. "Because you forced me to." He scoffed. "You don't understand, Dad. This was supposed to make life easier for all of us." "Easier?" I said quietly, my voice steady but sharp. "You mean easier for you? You were ready to sell my life's work, my memories, without a second thought. That's not care, David. That's betrayal." His mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time, I think he realized he couldn't twist this into something noble. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of years between us. I gave you everything I could. My time, my love, my trust. And all I asked was that when the time came, you'd stand by me. Instead, you tried to take the very ground I stand on. That's not a son I can rely on. The silence between us was colder than any winter night. He looked at me, searching for something. Anger, forgiveness, weakness. But all he found was resolve. From now on, I continued, I'll take care of myself. I don't need promises that turn to lies. I don't need a caretaker who sees me as a burden. I may be old, but I am not powerless. He swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. For a moment, it seemed like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He just turned and walked away, his figure shrinking as he disappeared down the path. I closed the door slowly, leaning against it for support. My chest ached, not from defeat, but from something deeper, finality. I knew I had drawn a line, and there was no going back. That night, I sat at the kitchen table again, staring at the empty chair across from me. I thought about my wife, about what she would have said if she were here. I imagined her voice telling me I had done the right thing. And for once, I believed it. The house was quiet, but it wasn't hollow. It was mine. Every creak in the floorboards, every whisper of the wind through the windows. It belonged to me, and I would guard it until my last breath. I may have lost my son's trust, maybe even his love, but I had reclaimed something just as important, my dignity. In the end, I lost a son, but I found myself again. That was my last word on the matter. In the end, I lost a son, but I found myself again.